Today's show is brought to you by locally owned and operated Highland Rim Speedway. Highland Rim Speedway is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year with great short track door-to-door stock car racing in a safe, family-friendly atmosphere. Visit their website at highlandrim.com. Jeff Meeks and Chris Austin invite you to watch your favorite sports event at the Batter's Box at 43 Hermitage Avenue in Nashville, Tennessee. The Batter's Box offers shuttle service to all Titans home games. It's a great place for friends to gather for the game and after the game. So check out the Batter's Box Bar and Grill, and thanks again for sponsoring the show.
Well, hello everybody, I'm Joe Williams. Coming up next on a special edition of Pit Pass, we have a long conversation with Metro Councilman Duane Dominy about the Tennessee State Fairgrounds, the racetrack, the state fair, the flea market, and the changes that could possibly be coming. Something you're going to want to see. Stay with us. Coming up next on Pit Pass.
From the family grocery hauler to fire-breathing racing engines, the one name you need to know is USA Motor and Machine, located at 51 Cleveland Avenue in Nashville, Tennessee. Give them a call at 615-726-3725 or at usamotorandmachine.com. Bandwidth for today's show is brought to you by SoftLayer.com. We love SoftLayer here at Talkopolis. They are the greatest hosting company ever. They make everything easy. Check out their website at SoftLayer.com. Thanks again for sponsoring the show.
Microcasting for your city. Talkopolis.
Well, welcome back, everybody. I'm Joe Williams, and with me today is Councilman Duane Dominy of the 28th District of the Metropolitan Nashville, Davidson County. It's a heck of a term.
Yes,
it's a long term in there. He's also worked quite extensively with some folks, Save Our Fairgrounds, the folks trying to make sure that the state fairgrounds remains a state fairground.
Yes.
Just to bring some folks up to date, the Tennessee State Fair and other events have been held at the Tennessee State Fairgrounds, basically at the corner of Wedgwood and Owensville Road for 100 years.
107 years this year.
There have been various ways of operating that facility. Long story short, in 1963, when Nashville became the very first metropolitan government in the country, where the county and the city joined together, part of the original charter for Metro was that the fairgrounds were kind of set apart a little bit different. Mm-hmm. A state fair board was established inside Metro government to operate the facility.
That's correct.
Now, over the course of almost 50 years that Metro has been Metro, and we use that term kind of synonymous with city and everything else, there have been some changes. Probably 3 or 4 years ago, our current mayor, Carl Dean, decided that maybe the fairgrounds was not what it should have been. It shouldn't be a fairgrounds. Maybe there should be something different. A lot of folks got together and said, no, that's not the case. You helped work out and work towards an actual voter referendum.
Yep. Well, as you point out, in September 2009, the mayor sent a letter in the middle of the fair indicating that this is the last fair to be held on the property, that the city was going to do something else with the property. Incidentally, that was done without the knowledge of the director of the fairgrounds or the fair board.
Interesting.
I didn't agree with that. I met with the mayor in November of that year. That's the last time I sat down and had a face-to-face conversation with him, sitting down anyway. And he asked me if there's anything else I want to talk about after I'd agreed to support another issue he is talking about. And I said, I don't agree with what you're doing with the fairgrounds, and he gave me some excuses as to, well, neighbors don't like the noise of the racetrack, it's really not making any money, and all these things, and I really covered those pretty easily. I pointed out that if they're 105, I'd be glad to talk to them about the noise of the racetrack, because otherwise they bought their house knowing it was there. And then they stopped that, and he said, well, I'm going to do what I want anyway, and I told him, I'll fight you for all I'm worth, sir.
And that's been the battle since.
And that's what we've done, is take the battle to the city for the people.
Now, we all remember the Red Army and that
Yes.
great Tuesday night, and I was there among probably 3,000 other people who showed up, and they were all in red, one kind of another, going, no, don't do this. May have been, having lived here all of my life, that may have been with the exception of the late 60s, early 70s with the busing and desegregation issue of the schools, that is probably the biggest turnout of citizens for any issue in the history of the city.
I'm told it's the biggest turnout in the history of the city. It's over 3,000 people there. There were 2,900 and something came in after 5 o'clock.
Right.
And there were over 500 or 600 when I got there at 3. But in that vote, that was January 18th, and
got the exact date, don't you?
and that was an exciting night. But that was a process, and we won that battle. But the battle's not over.
Well, I was going to say now Metro held a referendum.
Yes, we did.
And 70+% of the people said, "Hey, the fairgrounds is fine. Let's leave the fairgrounds alone. Right. Let's continue to do the same things: the state fair, the racetrack, the flea markets, the other exposition events, if you will." They were, I kind of call that a mandate in political circles, 70-something%.
71% countywide. In my district, it was 85%.
Kind of tells you right there. Apparently, though, the people spoke, and I hate to put it this way, but it's almost like the people spoke, and a couple of years later, some folks anyway, don't want to listen anymore.
Well, actually, I don't know if that's the case yet, but we need to stay on top of the issue. The master plan was passed on that January 18th. That was when we topped that hill,
right.
and the mayor realized that, oops, I don't think I've got the votes.
He's been very quiet since.
But that bill that saved the fairgrounds through December 31st of 2012 required a master plan process to take place. And that's what's been in the news here lately, is the master plan has begun to come to fruition, and they're presenting those parts of the master plan. Those plans have nothing to do with what the council may approve.
Okay.
And people need to understand that, because the media has been a little short of making that clear. They just say this is what's going to happen, and it's not. This is what the developers and the planners that have been hired to put together this plan with details for the council to review has proposed. But the council has to approve it. And in order to do away with any of the current uses, that referendum we talked about requires 27 affirmative votes on the council. So regardless of what the master plan folks present, that doesn't mean we're going to change what happens on the property,
okay,
unless there's 27 affirmative votes on the council.
Okay, so they can still, even though 71% of the people said this is what we want, 27 council members can say, no, we're going to go a different direction.
That's possible.
Okay.
Now, whether there's a political will amongst council members to do that or not is still in the question.
This master plan and the couple that I've seen, there seems to be a missing concept of one, two, or more of the three main purposes for the property. And let's face it, I mean, let's just get down to it. Flea markets, racetracks, and state fairs.
Yeah.
These folks are coming in and doing master plans. What does the master planning process cost?
I don't have the figure on that.
Just ballpark. I mean, it's got to be millions.
I was thinking it was in the 200,000 range.
Okay, I thought it was a little more than that.
No, I don't think it's that much.
Maybe it's what they're proposing is.
What they're proposing to do if the master plan goes through is in the multiple millions, and it's ranged anywhere from nothing up to 300-something thousand, which is really interesting because they're saying to redo the fairgrounds on site would be 153 million, and we just got data a week or so ago that Nebraska, Cornhusker State, just redid their state fairgrounds, rebuilt all but one building for 42 million.
And I would assume their property's probably bigger than ours.
Much bigger. One of our Save Our Fairgrounds board members has spoken to a person who's a certified fair expert.
Okay.
Now, I don't know where you get that title from, but he's the only one that I've heard from.
Normally that comes from folks who've been in the business for a very long time.
Yeah. And he actually said that the numbers that they've presented so far are a joke.
Really?
And we'll probably be having that to show to the folks on the council when this master plan comes forward. But anyway, that's some of what's been going on.
Why the great push to make the change on something that has that has worked for 107 years?
Well, I think there's some folks within the city who realize that they could make some money if it was redeveloped. Who that was, I don't know. I know Rich Riebling talked about redeveloping this over 12 years ago when he was on the fair board. But I don't know who the driving force is behind, but they want to redevelop that. But the reason we're having this discussion is not because of the value of the property or whether or not it's making profit or that what's the current uses are the highest and best use. It's because the city leaders are not committed to the property. And here's a case in point. Last year we spent $500,000 developing a plan for Centennial Park.
Right.
It's 2 miles from downtown on a major thoroughfare with easy interstate access.
Okay.
Same logistics as the state fairgrounds.
Yes.
Much more level and usable. None of it's in the floodplain. But we're not talking about demolishing that,
are we?
and redeveloping that for its highest and best use. We're looking at keeping it. And in fact, we spent $500,000 just to develop a plan for its future. We bought the airport over by Shelby Park, the old airport.
Cornelia Fort, yes.
Cornelia Fort, yeah.
That's where I grew up, yeah.
And to add to Shelby Park, because we're committed to Shelby Park, which happens to be 2 miles from downtown.
Yeah, and it's a straight shot.
Now it's not it doesn't have easy internet access, but it's 2 miles from downtown. We just bought 800 acres off I-65 for parkland, open space, for I can't remember how many millions, because we're committed to parks.
But we're not committed to the fairgrounds.
We're not committed to the fairgrounds. What I want to get to is where the city leaders, and I've done it, I've committed. I may have telegraphed that, but
it's kind of obvious, but that's okay.
I've telegraphed that, but anyway, I want the city leaders to say we're committed to doing what the voters said they want. We're going to make this property successful.
This is in the face of full disclosure, having worked and spent 6 weeks working for the fair board in 1985. So that's, I was 20 years old and not very bright, I guess, at the time. This is something that is kind of been moving for a while. And at one point, the state fair and the fairgrounds not only made money, but they had a large rainy day fund. They were in a position to make changes, etc. Now, about 12 years ago, as a good example, this quasi-metro group that was kind of separate under the charter all of a sudden was pulled into the full metro government, and lo and behold, the rainy day fund disappeared.
It has slowly dissipated.
What happened to the money?
Well, first, let me go back to how we developed that reserve fund. And people need to realize the fairgrounds property, with the exception of when it was bought with a bond in the early 1900s, has never received a tax dollar.
Correct.
It is an enterprise fund. It's lived off of its own profits.
Correct.
The good years they save and have for the bad years, and that's the way life has been for most people throughout history. We save when we have a good year and use that savings when we have a bad year. Well, those profits were generated by two primary sources. That is NASCAR racing on the property,
right,
and a little event called Fanfare, which is now called the CMA Music Festival,
correct,
or whatever it's changed to this year. They moved it downtown because it brought more opportunities down there and helped promote downtown. But there's not been an event or a lot of efforts that I've seen to bring in other venues when those two revenue sources were lost.
Right.
Now, I'm just going to speak from a business standpoint.
Okay.
If I own a business and a manager of that business loses two primary revenue sources, and in 15 years hasn't done anything to replace those two primary revenue sources, they wouldn't be my manager of my business not much longer.
One of the questions that I was going to ask you is, quite frankly, it kind of falls into that, and that is, we look at this master plan that we're paying $200,000, $300,000 for. We see, and we're going to talk about this RFI, request for information, that's coming, where we're basically looking for a vision for the property.
Excuse me.
why has that vision not come from within?
I really can't answer that question. But that's part of the reason the council required a master plan process to be done, so we would have some data that we can make an informed decision on and make some choices that would be based on some business practices, sound business practices, industry standards, et cetera. That's one of the reasons we did that. It allows us to compromise to get the votes, because as you know, that was a pretty close vote when we passed that.
Right.
In fact, when we walked in the building that day, it was a tie.
That's close.
It was a tie, and that meant we lost.
Okay.
But we did some things to
Convince some people.
sway one particular vote, and we managed to do that. And but I can't tell you why that vision hasn't come. But I know the Fair Board now is working to try to find solutions to some of that. They're meeting with some people that have some alternative options. You mentioned the RFI. I've recommended an RFI.
Right.
Not that I want to privatize the fairgrounds entirely, but I want to preserve it. And I know that with the master plan process that's underway, they want to paint us into a box that we can either do nothing and lose money, because as quote the master plan developer, you'll have to continue to subsidize it forever, which is not a true statement.
Correct.
It lacks logic, but I won't get into exactly how that is, but it does. Or we can do away with it and invest this little amount of money for all this big return. Well, I don't like either of those options.
Okay.
So what I want to do is have a third option. What can we do that honors the wishes of the voters, that allows the private entities that have said, I can make a profit with the fairgrounds if I only had a 25-year lease, which is one of the reasons we don't have NASCARs. They wouldn't give them a long-term lease, so they can invest in the property.
Trust me, I lived through that, yes.
And so why not allow people to put their money where their mouth is? Issue an RFI. This is not a commitment that we privatize. This is just to seek interest from private parties that will invest their money into the property for the long-term benefit of the people of Nashville and the state of Tennessee, and improve the property, knowing that they have 25-year time frame to recoup their investment.
Exactly.
That's my idea.
You talk about the property beginning to lose money and have to be subsidized. And I have to ask you, there's the Fair Board in the last couple of years has had a history, and I can think of two very specific examples where potential partners have come in and offered sums of money to operate a fair, to operate a racetrack, literally had money on the table in one case, and they turned them down for a lower bid. How does that jive with the idea of this group and Metro, and I'll throw it back on the city as a whole, being good stewards of the citizens' money if they have an asset but they take less than what's offered?
I've asked that question myself. Now one of those instances was when they reversed a decision on who to operate the fair.
Correct.
They had a guarantee of over $200,000, $250,000, and they reversed that and went with the current operator of the state fair. And I can tell you why that was done. They were told that legally, because that organization was specifically named in the legislation that required them to host the Tennessee State Fair on the property through to December 31st, 2012. Mention that entity by name first. And then it said, or other suitable nonprofit. But because of some legal technicality, because they're mentioned by name and they're listed first, they have to be given first right of refusal. And that's what I've been told by legal counsel on multiple occasions, is that's why they had to undo that agreement. Because now I don't know whether that's political speak, but I've been told that by two different lawyers.
Well, even if that's legally correct, it sounds like then there needs to be an amendment to that requirement. I would think the whole idea.
It's gone away now.
Okay, I was going to say, because
December 31st, 2012.
It's done.
It's done.
Over. I would think the whole idea is if you have an asset, get as much for it as you can.
Right, I agree, and I supported the original contract for multiple reasons. One, because they had committed to it. And I'm an old-fashioned guy. If you say you're going to do something,
sure,
you do what you're going to do. say you're going to do. You let your yes be yes and your no be no. But that's not what took place, and so that was one of the issues. And if another event was operating the racetrack, they took a much lower bid. But anyway, in fact, that day I had legislation crafted to remove the fair board. I've not filed it, but it was crafted, and it's still sitting.
You still got it waiting.
It's still there in the event I need to file it. But right now, fair board's doing what they need to do, I think, for the most part. They still have a difficult situation dealing with the politics, because they're in a difficult spot. They're a volunteer board, appointed by the mayor, approved by the council.
And they're kind of caught between the two.
And they're caught between the two and trying to honor the wishes of the people. And they are, in my opinion, trying to honor the wishes of the people within that
from here
type
forward. With
position
what they're bound into.
And they have to work themselves out of a hole, quite frankly.
Sure. As we move forward, and I'm going to go back to the state fair for just a second, because the last couple of, and I remember when the letter went out that, gee, this is the last one. And at that time, it kind of still spread. In the old days, the state fair ran literally, you closed down Wedgwood, and where Wedgwood comes into Rains Avenue, all the way down to Nolensville Road, all the way around the property, the top of the hill, the buildings are full, the barns are full, there's a midway. I mean, the whole thing is in use. Last year's fair, very small area just at the top of the hill.
Yes. And it's actually the last two fairs have been that way. I'm told that was done for, quote, security purposes, unquote.
Okay.
Having dealt with crowds and conventions and also some marketing things, sometimes if you put a small group of people in a tight space and use proper camera angles, you make a small group of people look like a whole lot.
Okay.
They do that in cinema all the time. For battle scenes, they take 50 regulars and they zoom in on them. It looks like a couple thousand.
Well, but by that same argument, shouldn't the new convention center be about 10,000 square feet?
Yeah, if you use that same argument. It makes it look like it's full that way.
Yeah, I'm just going by logic. I'm just trying to follow the logic that I'm hearing.
But no, I'm not saying it was right. I'm just telling you what I've been told.
I understand.
I think one of the benefits of having it all the way down to Nolensville Road is it's visible.
Right.
And it is seen, people driving down the road. Now it's not bad on the hill because people can see the Ferris wheel from the interstate. But the challenge is it needs to be spread out so that it's bigger. It looks like it's small, as one of my colleagues pointed out. It's been the Tennessee State Carnival, rather than the Tennessee State Fair, and we don't want that. We want it to be the showplace that the people deserve. We want it to be the event, the fair, to be the event that people look forward to throughout the year. As I did, I judged animals when I was in high school on that property.
Yeah.
Traveled from Lawrence County, Tennessee, spent a hotel room night, stayed here, and had a grand old time.
And it was a big deal.
And it was a huge deal.
Big deal. Now, and quite frankly, you may or may not appreciate this, but a friend of mine told me, he said, the last state fair was almost like Fair Park was just pulled up top of the hill and we were done.
I've heard that quite a bit, yes.
You know, if that's the case, let's just let's put Fair Park back in place, but that's not going to happen. The third, we've talked about the state fair. The racetrack issue is the racetrack issue. The noise issue, quite frankly, is one that developed dramatically during an administration that is no longer anywhere in this state. And you and I could go on with that one for a long time. Suffice it to say that some very poor decisions by an operator has put everybody in the future kind of in a box.
I know that.
And I think everybody since has tried very much to be good neighbors.
Yes.
Some of the damage, though, may never be repaired.
It may not. Now I have to point out, though, that council district voted 69% to keep the fairgrounds like it is.
Really?
So the suggestion that the neighbors don't like the noise of the racetrack is only slightly true, because 69% of them voted to keep all of it.
Wow.
So it's a vocal minority that wants to do away with the racetrack because of the, quote, noise.
There's a number I did not know.
Yes.
That's pretty impressive.
Now, I also add to you let you know that once they've put in mufflers, my neighbor currently operates the racetrack.
Right.
Tony Formosa. Yes, I actually supported him. He is one of my constituents. That is what I was elected to do. I know it's a novel idea, but that's what I've tried to do.
I understand.
And after he brought in mufflers, and he helped lead the fight to do that, I was actually walking across the parking lot. You know the little building between the racetrack and the senior center at the corner of Rains and Wedgwood?
Right.
There's a little building about halfway between there. My wife had parked our van out there. I walked out there to get something out of the van, and I could hear the crowd cheering for individual racers over the race cars.
I'm not surprised.
And that's a fact I experienced personally. So I can tell you the sound has been abated for the most part. Now, sure, you can still hear it. Of course, I used to could hear it over all the way on Brentford Avenue at the school board. I could hear him practice, and I could.
Sure.
In fact, Tony was doing one night, and I came home and said, "Tony, you got a cylinder missing on that car."
That's pretty good.
He said, "Yeah, I know. I can't figure out what it's doing."
The third thing, the flea market has been for, good Lord, 30 years probably, one of, if not the premier flea market events in the Southeast, if not the nation.
Between 4th and 7th, depending on which magazine or
Exactly.
rating organization you read.
Exactly. If something were to happen to surely to goodness, I guess I find it hard to believe that you have that kind of an operation and somebody still said, well, it's not making any money.
Well,
my logic is bad. I come from East Nashville.
You're bringing in,
money.
no, the problem is I think you're bringing in logic into a city, into an issue that deals with government.
Okay, fair enough.
Those are too seldom intertwined
Having worked in government, yeah, I understand.
I've often asked that question. I can tell you part of the things that indicate a loss for the property is, and a depletion of the reserve funds, has been depreciation of assets that the city owns.
Right. It's all paper loss, though.
It's paper loss.
It's paper.
And there were requirements by previous administration to bring everything up to ADA compliance.
Right.
And all the other cities' departments were given money through grants and other things to bring the properties up to ADA compliance. The fairgrounds was forced to use their reserve funds. And the third thing was a previous administration also implemented a little thing called internal service fees.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now that's a big word for what was put together, in my opinion, is a way to jerk the chain of department heads who didn't go along with the administration.
An internal services fund, for those of you who may not just share this with you, it's basically, for example, in metro government for years, let's just use trash service as an example. Well, the city provided trash service to every department that needed the service because they were part of the city. Right. With an internal services fund, each department now has to pay through their budget, and it's basically paper, and it's kind of floating numbers back and forth. But now they have to be responsible for paying for that service, and they don't have the option to maybe go to a private service if the price is less.
Yeah, same thing with phones,
computers,
computer maintenance, computer repairs, etc. Also, maintenance on vehicles.
Correct.
One of the things that we changed and early on in this battle for the fairgrounds was, in that process of implementing those internal service fees, they compartmentalized all the maintenance on vehicles. Well, guess what? The General Services Department took control of all the vehicles in the city of Nashville.
Okay.
Including golf carts purchased by the State Fair Board.
With State Fair Board money that was separate from Metro.
But they were taken control of by the General Services Department and then rented back to the Fair Board through this internal service fee.
That they've already paid for.
For $2,000 a year.
But they've already paid for them. They bought them and paid for them.
It has nothing to do with it. There you
Again,
go.
here I go bringing logic into this situation. You're right.
And so they stopped that after shortly into this fight, because we pointed out that was one of the ways they were depleting the reserve funds. And so to keep that from being a political football we could use, they did away with that. They let the Fair Board keep their golf carts, which is really nice of them. Anyway, that's some of the things that have gone on. $40,000 for phone services.
That's
for
crazy.
The fairgrounds.
That is crazy. Sorry, that's crazy.
I know, but anyway, so some of those things have been corrected, some of them haven't. I will say, in the defense of the current mayor, they have streamlined some of those internal services and made them consistent from department to department. That wasn't the case prior. Some departments would be charged less for the same services before because, as I pointed out, I believe it was set up as a tool to jerk the chains of the departments.
Sure.
Because I know for one that I was dealing with, before I was elected in 2007, they had asked for some funding for certain things, and they were told that, we'll give you that funding, even though it's not what we asked you to ask for, but if we do, we're going to take it back through internal service fees.
The mayor giveth and the mayor taketh away.
The wonders of government.
I love it. Now, we've gone all through this. We were really going to try to bring this down and concisely put this, and it just can't be done. What happens now? I mean, here we sit. We're getting master plans back. The people have spoken, but maybe it's not going to be as strong as it might have been. What do we do now?
Well, here's what we need to do. The people need to stay informed and be where we can call out the Red Army.
Well, but where are we going to get information that is not, I'm going to use this term. How do we not get caught up in government propaganda?
Well,
bad term, but
Save Our Fairgrounds, which I serve on the board of,
right.
It's an organization we founded in the last year because we saw that the fight wasn't over. We have a Facebook page and a web page, saveourfairgrounds.com.
Okay.
And on Facebook, it's Save Our Fairgrounds.
Simple.
And go there, like that, keep up with the web page. We sign up so we have your email and phone number so we can send out email updates. We can do that without spending money.
Exactly.
We don't have the funds of the city to back our efforts. We have to do that frugally.
Exactly.
Which is not a bad thing. I've done that for years, so that's not.
I was gonna say, you understand. I'm gonna say it's logic, but it's not a government thing, I guess.
So do that. Stay in touch. Let us know how we can get a hold of you, that you're interested. You can be fans on the Facebook page or friends on the Facebook page, and we'll keep you updated. We'll post articles as well as sometimes the story behind the article.
Okay.
Because sometimes the media doesn't always share the full facts.
Well,
it's like the recent
sometimes they don't get the full facts.
That's right. Just like the recent stories about the state fair contract is in jeopardy. The state fair of 2013 may not happen. Well, that was never the case. We had a state fair operator ready to go that was going to give us more money than the current one is.
So what happened?
That's a whole nother show.
Okay.
But anyway, so
real quick though, I'm assuming then we're going with the first.
They're going with the
pitch
first
and
because
not getting more money.
they got closer to what we were asking than they were, and it's to avoid a showdown with the state and all these other entities involved.
All right, that's
so
good.
it's a slightly political decision, but they're a lot closer than what they were as of yesterday.
Okay, good.
Or is it today? Today's the 13th.
This is middle of February. So.
It's middle of February. So sorry to put the date on that we dated the show.
Fine.
But as of today, they have stepped up. They had their board meeting yesterday and just stepped up and offered more money to the city. So we're not subsidizing them as much as we have been.
What do the citizens of Nashville do besides being ready to get the Red Army back in order? The Facebook page, Save Our Fairgrounds, saveourfairgrounds.com. What else? I mean, is it now time to go back to phone calls? And
we don't need the phone calls yet.
Okay.
If you want to show up at the council meetings in red shirts just to meet some of the new council members that didn't experience that overwhelming support last time, because we have quite a few new ones, that wouldn't hurt. Just to introduce yourself so that they know who you are. That wouldn't be a bad thing. There's free parking for all the council meetings.
Right.
So it doesn't cost you anything. You park in the courthouse garage. So anyway, we can do that. Be on the Facebook page so we can be in contact with you and call you out if need be, because it's a fluid process and everything's changing moment by moment. Sometimes we're not going to know what's going to go on. And keep your powder dry.
When does this fight end? How much longer will this go on?
This fight ends when the city has decided it's committed to preserving that property and making it what it ought to be.
You know, that sounds pretty simple and logical, but to use your own phrase, we're still dealing with government.
It is. It's now I know for a fact there are some in the government that aren't committed to that. I am committed to it. I will continue to fight as long as I'm here. Now my council term is up the same time the mayor's term is up, August 2015. But as long as I'm here, I'll continue to fight But when we're committed to preserving that property and making it the showplace that its heritage and culture this city require and deserve, then and only then will this fight be over.
That sounds like a great place to go away. Folks, I want to thank you for joining us today. Duane Dominy is Metro Councilman in District 28, obviously a firm supporter of the Tennessee State Fairgrounds. And I've learned a lot in the last little bit. I bet you have too. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.